Dear students, today we will talk about sensory organs and sensory system. I have divided this topic into three parts. Its first part we will talk about classification of sensory organs, and also we will talk about organs of smell and taste. In the second video we will talk about organ of vision, about eyes, and in the third part we will talk about organ of hearing and balance. So, first of all, let's revise this diagram which shows us reflex arc, which is the basis of functioning of nervous system. So, here we can see sensory neuron, which receives information from outer environment and sends this information to the neurons inside the CNS, to neurons in the spinal cord or to neurons in the brain. So, sensory neurons, they have axons and also they have well-developed dendrites which receive information from outer environment. Here we can see dendrites and they somehow receive information about different kinds of information, about different kinds of sense, and they send this information to the cell body of sensory neuron, and after the processing of this information, sensory neuron sends this information to CNS. So functioning of reflex arc begins from sensation, from receptors, which are nerve endings of dendrites of sensory neuron. And now let's look how this part of nervous system and how this part of reflex arc provides own functions. So how do dendrites receive information from outer environment and how they send this information to CNS? Here we can see borderline tissue is epithelial tissue. It provides border between outer and inner environment. And here we can see neuron, for example, sensory neuron. It has dendrite and it has axon. So some kind of sensory information comes here from outer environment, and this neuron, dendrite of neuron, directly receives information from outer environment. It's irritated by this information, and this information runs on the cell membrane of this neuron. It's excited neuron, and this neuron via dendrite, via cell body and axon sends this information to CNS. So wave of depolarization runs on the cell membrane of dendrite of sensory neuron, on the cell membrane of the perikaryon of cell body of neuron, and goes through axon to CNS. It's direct acceptance of information by nervous cell. Nervous cell receives information from outer environment directly. So this type of sensory organs which use this type of sensation, they are called primary or neurosensory organs. Why neurosensory? Because nervous cells, neurosensory cells, they directly receive information from outer environment. They are primary cells which receive this type of information, different types of information. It's first type of sensory organs. But this type isn't only type of sensory organs. We also have another type of sensation, and let's look at this type. So here we can see epithelial cells, epithelial tissue, and some cells are modified. Some epithelial cells, they are specialized cells which have ability to receive information from outer environment. They are called sensoepithelial cells. They are located between usual epithelial cells and they have attachment, they have connection with dendrite of sensory neuron. Here you can see sensory neuron and dendrite of this neuron. And let's look how information goes to CNS. Here we can see information from outer environment, and this information irritates, activates special sensoepithelial cell, not directly neuron, only sensoepithelial cell. This cell receives this information from outer environment. It's activated after this, and only after this stage information goes to sensory neuron, and this sensory neuron sends information to CNS. So here we can see additional structure, additional cell which provides connection between outer environment and nervous cell. So sensoepithelial cell, and neuron in this case is secondary. It has previous stage, previous cell which receives information directly. So conduction of information in this case is indirect because we have additional sensory epithelial cell which reacts to different signs from outer environment. So this type of sensory organs which use this mechanism of conduction of information is called secondary or sensory epithelial organs. Secondary because neurons are secondary according to the order of information conduction. And they are sensory epithelial cells, sensory epithelial organs, because there are special sensory epithelial cells which receive information from outer environment. In primary sensory organs, there are nervous cells which receive information directly, but in this case, conduction of information is indirect. So we have two basic types of sensory organs, primary and secondary, or neurosensory and sensory epithelial organs. For example, here we can see organ of smell. Here we can see special modified neurons. They have cell bodies, they have dendrites and axons, one dendrite and one axon. And there are supportive cells. And here we can see that some smelling molecules are coming here and they irritate dendrites of modified neurons. They are olfactory cells. So after this they are activated and wave of depolarization goes through this cell via axon to CNS. This type, we can call this type neurosensory or primary because we have modified neurons here in a special olfactory epithelium. It's organ of smell, it's primary type of sensation. Next, organ of vision. In eyes, we have special modified neurons. We call them rods and cones, and they also directly react to light, to signs of outer environment. So we have sign of outer environment. It irritates special modified neuron, rod or cone, and this cell is activated and this cell sends information via following neurons to central nervous system. So it's also primary type of sensation. It's primary or neurosensory organ of vision. Next, organ of hearing and balance. They have same mechanism of sensation or almost the same. And let's look what is going on. Here we can see special epithelial cells or usual epithelial cells, but between them there are sensory epithelial cells or sensory epithelial cells. Here we can see this type of cell. And here we can see nerve engine, it's receptor nerve engine, it's engine of dendrite of the sensory neuron. So when this cell receives an irritation from outer environment, this factor is mechanical irritation. This cell is activated and after that cell sends information to neuron via this dendrite. And this type of conduction of information and also receiving of information is called secondary or sensory epithelial type. So organ of hearing and balance, it's a secondary sensory epithelial organs. So next type, next organ, it's organ of taste. Here we can see covering epithelium of tongue, and inside this epithelium we have special structures which are called taste buds, and they contain special sensory epithelial cells. Here we can see them. And when some tasty molecules are coming here, they are dissolved in the covering mucus as well as in the olfactory epithelium, and here they irritate special sensory epithelial cells. They are activated and after that they send this information to dendrites of sensory neuron, and they conduct this information to nervous system. So organ of taste is organ of secondary type of sensation or sensory epithelial organ. So we have two basic types of sensory organs, primary or neurosensory organs and secondary or sensory epithelial organs. Primary or neurosensory organs, they have direct type of conduction of information from outer environment. This information goes directly to the sensory neuron. In secondary sensory epithelial organs, there are special sensory epithelial cells which send this information to sensory neurons. So primary or neurosensory organs, they include organs of smell and organ of vision. And sensory sensory-epithelial organs, they include organ of taste, organ of hearing, and organ of balance. Two basic types of sensory organs. But let's look at this type of sensory structures. There are sensory or receptor nerve endings which are usually located inside the skin, but they also may be present in other organs. Here we can see dendrite of nervous cell, branched or unbranched, and also there are special glial cells which surround this dendrite, and also connective tissue capsule. There are different bodies, different structures, receptor structures inside the skin, and we call them mixed because they haven't sensory-epithelial cells, but they have additional structures, for example, connective tissue capsule, which participate in the conduction of information. We call them mixed. So, sensory organs, they have three types: primary neurosensory, secondary sensory-epithelial organs, and also we have mixed sensory organs, which include sensory nerve endings or receptor nerve endings, which usually are located in the skin, and we'll discuss them in topic skin. And now let's talk about some primary and some secondary sensory organs, and we'll begin from organ of smell. So let's talk about organ of smell. So organ of smell, it's primary type of sensory organs or neurosensory organ. And it means that nervous cells or modified nervous cells, they directly receive information from outer environment. Organ of smell includes special region inside the nasal cavity. It's modified nasal mucosa, which is covered with special olfactory epithelium. Here we can see this type of epithelium. And this olfactory epithelium isn't usual. It contains special sensory cells. And this type of epithelium, it contains olfactory cells. They are main cells and they are modified neurons. They have dendrite, cell body, and axon, modified neurons or olfactory cells. But also this type of epithelium contains special supportive cells or maintaining cells. Here we can see them. And also there are basal cells. We can see them here. Maintaining cells or supportive cells. They provide support. They maintain olfactory cells, but they don't receive information about smell. And also we have basal cells. They are stem cells and they participate in the regeneration of olfactory epithelium. So how this type of epithelium is functioning? This type of epithelium usually is covered with special layer of mucus, and some smelling molecules are coming here and they are dissolved in the mucus. And after that they irritate nerve endings, modified dendrites. Here we can see modified dendrites and modified cilia of those dendrites. They are branched here. And the molecules, smelling of molecules, they irritate these branches of dendrite, and this cell is activated when it receives information about some smelling molecules. And this activation causes depolarization of cell membrane of olfactory cell, and this wave of depolarization runs via axon of this cell in the CNS. These axons, they are going through basal membrane, they are going through connective tissue of mucosa of nasal cavity of olfactory epithelium, and axons, they are going through lamina cribrosa of bone, and they achieve olfactory bulb. Here we can see olfactory bulb, and axons of olfactory cells, they form olfactory nerve. And then there is olfactory type of receptor, and processing of information begins in the olfactory bulb. So it's how olfactory epithelium provides reception and processing of information. Here we can see olfactory cells, their axons which form olfactory nerve, and this nerve goes to olfactory bulb. Next is organ of taste. Organ of taste is composed of special structures which are located usually on our tongue, but also those structures are present in some regions of mucosa in oral cavity. Those structures are called taste buds. And organ of taste belongs to secondary or sensoepithelial type of sensory organs. Here we can see tongue, and on the tongue we have special structures, special projections or processes of tongue mucosa. They are called tongue papilla. Here we can see tongue papilla, and those papilla of tongue, here we can see their shape. On lateral surfaces there are special structures which are called taste buds. Here we can see taste buds. It's covering epithelium of tongue and its gap between two neighboring tongue papilla. It's located here. And we can see olfactory taste buds, and they provide taste sensation. Here we can see them. So let's look at structure of this taste bud. Here we can see covering epithelium of tongue. It's stratified squamous non-keratinized, or it may be particularly keratinized. And inside this epithelium we have special inclusions of special cells. They are called taste buds. The main cells in the taste buds are sensory cells or sensoepithelial cells which provide taste sensation. Also, there are supportive or maintaining cells. If you remember, olfactory epithelium, it also has supportive cells, and also we have basal cells which also provide regeneration as well as basal cells of olfactory epithelium. So the main difference between olfactory epithelium and taste buds is that olfactory epithelium contains neurosensory olfactory cells, but in organ of taste we have sensoepithelial sensory cells. Here we can see them. They aren't nervous, they are epithelial. And here we can see dendrite of neuron and endings of dendrites. They are common to sensoepithelial cells. And here we can see a layer of mucus which covers this epithelium, and taste molecules, different kinds of molecules from food. They are dissolved in this covered layer of mucus, and they are common to receptor cells, sensoepithelial cells. And they react to these molecules, they are activated, and then they send information to dendrite of sensory neuron. And this causes a wave of depolarization in the dendrites of sensory neuron, and this information goes to CNS. So it's sensoepithelial type of sensation, it's secondary type of sensation. It's organ of taste. And there are four main types of taste: sweet, sour, salty, and bitter. And also in recent studies, fifth type of taste has been described. It's umami type, and this type of taste usually is present in different polysaccharides and in other tasty molecules which aren't sweet, sour, salty, and bitter. For example, different polysaccharides, they have this type of taste. This type is called umami. And also this type of taste, it enhances all previous types of taste. So that's why it's described as very tasty type. In this video that's all, and in the next video we'll talk about organ of vision and also about organ of hearing and balance. Thank you for your attention.